everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to the Happiness Hour, an hour dedicated to the art of photography. Each week, I have the pleasure of introducing you to a new guest who shares their photography journey, valuable tips, inspiration, and insights to help you elevate your own photographic experience. Be sure to sign up for our newsletter, and for a full list of upcoming presentations, visit my website at lindanickell.com. Tonight's guest is Daniel Gomez. Daniel is a skilled bird photographer based in Central Texas, celebrated for his distinctive approach to capturing the beauty of avian life. Specializing in environmental portraits, he expertly frames his subjects within their natural habitats, highlights the intricate connection between birds and their surroundings. His work offers a rare and intimate glimpse into the lives of wild birds. For those in the Central Texas area, Daniel offers the opportunity to join one of his songbird workshops or for something truly special, a day trip photographing the endangered and elusive golden-cheeked warbler in its natural habitat. In tonight's presentation, Before the Shot, Bird Photography Success Tips. Daniel will cover essential preparation tips and strategies to help achieve success in bird photography, from understanding bird behavior and selecting the right gear to practical tips on timing, location, and safety. You can connect with Daniel through his website, dgomezwildlife.com. And if you're on Instagram, look for him at dgomezwildlife. Welcome to the Happiness Hour, Daniel.
Thanks, Linda. It's great to be on and great to meet a lot of you. I've known a few people in the call too, but it's yeah, great to meet everybody on.
Your, yeah, your stalkers came out of the room. Okay, so before you share your screen, because my speakers just race to the screen, they want to get off, they want to start. And I don't like that. So I want you to take a minute and fill in the gaps. Because, guys, before he came into the room, I'm like, Daniel, you need to really work on your about page. So, what did I miss? Are you a Do you do bird photography full time? Is this a hobby turned into kind of a side hustle? What did I miss? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, it's a hobby. My full time, I'm an accountant here in San Antonio, a tax accountant. So whenever I can get out of the office from working too much sitting down on the computer, I'm out photographing birds. And I just started that workshop stuff actually pretty recently. And it's honestly like mainly because I see so many photographers go to like Alaska, they go to Utah and Florida, and I never really see anybody like make Central Texas a destination for their wildlife photography. And there's so much diversity, biodiversity that we have here. So I thought, you know what, if nobody else is really offering this, maybe I can try and encourage other people to want to come visit and make this a destination because it truly is. And one of the best bird areas to visit in the country. There's so many different types of rare endangered birds. Just it's a lot of birds too that you have to pretty much come down here to see if you can't get them anywhere else. So that's kind of what started this little side passion of mine.
Well, you're an accountant. You need any kind of distraction and some excitement, and finding cute little birds will probably check those boxes. I'm going to agree with you. I grew up in South Texas, so I grew up south of San Antonio. LaSalle County is my home area. And I was not into birding until just, oh, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And I just happened to be roaming some of the back roads near my parents' home, and I saw all these birds. And, as a kid, you don't notice them. As a teenager, I'm certainly not interested in them. But as a middle-aged woman, it's like, oh my God. So it's a treat to be down there. And I kind of make an effort to get down there a lot during the migration because we are in that path. You know, it's just one of those, I don't know, treasures of South of Texas that, lots of birds go in and around us. So, I when I was looking at your website and I saw those two workshops that you were offering, I very rarely, that's not my thing, is to promote other people's workshops, but I wanted to promote yours because you're offering something in that's easy to get to. I mean, Central, you can fly into San Antonio, you can fly into Austin and make some really nice day trips
Yeah,
out there.
and the price is like pretty reasonable too. Yeah, you see so many people out there that charge hundreds, if not like, a few thousand. Like I'm not even to be honest, it's gonna sound like bad, but like I don't really need that money. Like my goal is to just bring people to want to come into Central Texas and to want to photograph these birds.
For you. Good for you. All right. Anything else you want to add before I let you get started?
No, yeah, I'm ready to go. All right. Well, this is my presentation. Again, thank you everybody for coming through. This is before the shot bird photography success tips. And just a little bit about me. I've got my Instagram and my website up, even though Linda, of course, mentioned it earlier. It's D Gomez Wildlife for both of those. And just a brief background on me. I started back in December 2020. I had a knee surgery. I was a big basketball player, big into it. And I was in a game and I tore my meniscus and my MCL, needed surgery, and I ended up getting it around early December and of 2020. And of course, that was during the pandemic. Everything was shut down, so I didn't really have anything to do. So I decided to finally pick up a camera. I purchased like a starter kit camera to photograph some birds in my backyard to help pass the time, and it eventually grew into what it is today. Um, I've kind of always like watched birds and known birds with my family because we would always visit South Texas, the Lower Rio Grande Valley. We'd visit Rockport. My aunt has a house in Rockport, and so we would always see the birds down there. Um, but I guess what sparked my interest in avian photography was probably like one trip we took down to Kings Ranch. I don't know if any of y'all have ever been down there. It's in Kingsville, Texas. It's just this huge, massive property of ranch land, and I think I read somewhere like that whole property is like the size of the state of Rhode Island, and it's like the biggest farm in the entire United States. It's super popular place for hunting and for birding. Um, there is a rare owl there that I think it's like one of the few places, if the maybe it's the only place you can see the ferruginous pygmy owl. Um, so I remember that very fondly, seeing those birds, and I think that's just where I kind of saw like birds like the vermilion flycatcher and green jay. So that trip, I guess, kind of piqued my interest. Well, yeah, I'd say peak it as a high school student because that was back in high school. So I was always like, who wants to like watch birds? So I didn't really get into it until I kind of grew up more and went through college and all. So that was just a little bit of a background. And this is a couple pictures of me. Of course, this is me and my beautiful wife here when we had our honeymoon in Colorado, and me photographing a reddish egret. Actually, Vineeth took that photo of me. So, and I think he's on the call. So it's I'm very thankful to be a very good friend of Vineeth, and I'm very glad he's a good friend of mine. Um, and what kind of grew my photography skills, I have to give credit where credit is due. I would not be where I'm at as a photographer if it was not for um, my two of my mentors, Scott Keys and Ray Hennessy. Both of them have helped me out through various points in my photography journey. And I do remember back in my first year, that's when I kind of decided I didn't want to be just a birder. I wanted to be a bird photographer. So I looked up who the best photographers were to learn from, and in my mind, and those were the two best that I could possibly learn from with their wealth of information. And I guess I kind of studied under both of them, and I would not, like I said, I would not be where I am if it wasn't for them. And I would recommend both of those photographers as mentors if you're looking to step up your game as a bird photographer. But enough about me. Just kind of going over the outline of this presentation here. You're going to talk about the three types of birds that I typically photograph: songbirds, shorebirds, and waterfowl. Of course, I'm down here in Central Texas. I have a hard time finding great locations for hawks, so I don't really have a hawk section here, but I feel like this is a pretty good list here with the songbirds, shorebirds, and waterfowl. It's generally, what types of birds most people can typically find no matter where they are in the country. So we'll be talking about for songbirds, their location and their behavior. For location, we're just going to go over what to look for, how to look for locations, kind of what to bring with you when you go photograph songbirds. Um, a little bit of going over their behavior during the migrations for spring migration, their breeding season, and fall migration, and then during the winter time. Um, for shorebirds and waterfowl, it's a little bit of the same, kind of more or less what I typically do for my outings. Just kind of gonna go over like the gear, the clothings, and the after the outings, and my approaches and techniques to photographing both of those. And this is a photo of a wood duck, in case you couldn't tell. Um, just some additional notes about the presentation. This is just stuff that works for me. Maybe some of this stuff will work for you. Maybe some of it won't. I just wanted to bring it up with you all just to kind of show what I do. And hopefully you can learn something from it and maybe pick up a few techniques along the way in your photography journey. And of course, yeah, at the time there'll after the presentation there will be some room for questions. So okay, for songbirds, the first point, locations, what to look for. I have elevation. Um, Typically, songbirds, in particular warblers, prefer that higher elevation. So that's what I'm going to look for. I'm going to look for locations that provide me eye level looks. That means being up in the same tops of the trees with these birds. And what better subject to use as an example down here in Central Texas than the golden-cheeked warbler? These guys, I feel like, are some of the harder birds to photograph in this area. Like I just said, you have to find places with elevation, and that's not always an easy thing in my area because the farther you go down Central Texas, I guess the more it kind of gets flat. So it's hard to get those eye level looks with these trees. But if you're in a good area in Central Texas, you can kind of find these little nooks and crannies, I call them, where you can just find these eye level looks with these birds. Like in this one here, this one was about gosh, like 45 minutes away from my area, and that's kind of how far I have to drive to get eye level looks of these birds. So it's not always fun, you got to wake up a little bit earlier and do that drive at like 5 6 a.m. But that's what I do to get looks like this for this bird. So um, just kind of going over that. So let's move on here. Here's another example of this Tennessee warbler. This was actually photographed in the Texas Hill Country too, believe it or not. Um, a lot of people get when they up in the eastern United States, they get a lot of these warblers passing through, and they can get like super easy eye level looks of these birds in non-breeding plumage, like this Tennessee warbler here. Um, but it's a little bit more difficult for us in Central Texas to get fall migration good eye level looks unless you're at one of these. I guess if you're in one of these, like let's see, what's the over there in the Galveston area, you can probably get some good looks at these birds eye level. But for me, I kind of had to work for for this Tennessee warbler shot. It wasn't that easy because, like I said, it's harder to find eye level looks. But if you can get those little honey holes, keep them. They're good places where you can eventually get anything to come in your way. Like this could have been any fall migrating warbler. This could have been like a ruby crowned kinglet, black crested titmouse. It could have been anything, and just getting this distant background, the out of focus bokeh is kind of what I look for as well when I'm up in these elevated areas. So that's something to keep in mind if you're trying to look for an area to get elevation. Just kind of look for those distant backgrounds and beautiful bokeh. Here's another example of elevation, this ruby crowned kinglet. Again, this was kind of in the fall season, and this one I also had to work for. I actually had to work for it too a little bit in post processing because I shot it kind of poorly, believe it or not. Um, but I like this image as well, not only because it kind of covers the things that I'm talking about, but I really do like that little brown leaf at the beginning of this little branch here. I took this back in November, and not everything had kind of started to turn for the fall season. There was just beginning to start changing colors, and I feel like this image kind of tells that story where just this little leaf it was had turned brown and everything else was still green. When I took this photo, I was like, "Oh my gosh, why couldn't this that leaf have been green like the rest of them?" I thought it was like too distracting. I thought it was not that good of an image because of that. But you know, I'm thinking about the story and the time I'm photographing this image, and it makes sense to me, and I kind of ended up liking it. And I tried to keep the little at the bottom here, these leaves, and kind of keep them in the crop here. So. That's just something to keep in mind again too, is if you can tell a story with with your images. Here's another example of elevation. This summer tanager here, photographed last year in the spring. I've got some bokeh I'm shooting through, like another juniper tree in front of me, and kind of got this little window of this summer tanager, and it looks a little soggy. That's because it had just stopped raining, and this bird had jumped up on this juniper tree and started to sing, and so I was able to find a hole in that juniper tree. So that's another thing that you may want to look for when you're up in elevation is kind of look at what trees are like in the area behind the set that you're in front of. Maybe you can get the nice little window openings like this here. Another example of elevation. It doesn't have to be a colorful summer tanager. It doesn't have to be a rare golden-cheeked warbler. You can find a Carolina chickadee like this one here in Central Texas, and if you find those little windows in elevation, you can photograph something that looks pretty. Like I've been saying, this could have been any bird, and here's an example. It's just like, you know, a bird that people get in your backyards, but if you get all those nice traits that you're looking for with songbirds, getting an elevation, you can turn out with a nice image. So I kind of like this one. I like again, it's some foreground and the birds kind of shining pretty nicely on this sunrise, this morning sunrise. Okay, so then now we're moving on to how to look for locations. And I only have one monitor here, so excuse me if there's any hiccups. But this is typically what I will do, and I'm going to use an example. I'm going to use a county that's in Central Texas, Kimball County. So kind of what I do is I'll go to the eBird home screen, and I will go. If anybody doesn't know what eBird is, I'm sure, I mean, everybody talks about eBird on like any normal YouTube video about bird photography. It's just a citizen science database where people can, bird watchers can track their sightings, post images of birds that they see, audio recordings, and it's a pretty great tool if you want to find locations to photograph birds as well. And if you want to find locations on eBird, what I will typically do is I'll go to this Explore tab up here, and from there, I will go to a species that I may want to photograph. So just for this example, I'd type in golden-cheeked warbler. I'd look for the area, and I'm just going to use, like I said, Kimball County as my example here. So I just popped over to the tab for Kimball County, and this is just showing all the checklists and the species that people have seen in Kimball County. Um, so from there, I'll just kind of scroll down to this recent photos area here. So I've already got that opened up here. Let me show you actually this. I'll just open it again. See, it'll have this little filter for days since uploaded 7. So this is just like going to show you all photos that have been uploaded since the last week. So I like to get rid of that when I'm looking for a new location to just show all the images ever taken, ever posted to eBird for for this county. So see, it's got Kimball County, Texas, USA, and just showing all the photos. And I'm just going to be looking here for the traits that I like to look for in my images. I like to look for, like I said, elevation. I want to see those out of focus backgrounds. I want to see like some nice color. I'm looking for the foliage. I'm looking for what plants are growing in that area. So if I just kind of scroll down here a little bit, I'm going to give some bird watchers and some bird photographers some credit here. But just looking at this one here, like this is kind of what I'm looking for, this out of focus background and this nice bokeh here. So if I'm looking for a new location, I'm gonna say, this is pretty nice. Let me keep looking forward and seeing what else here. See, here's another one with the out of focus background and nice kind of plants. So I'm not going to critique any of these images. I think these are all, this is eBird. There's not really any, people that are trying to do this for photography here. So it's just to keep in mind to use eBird not only to just record your sightings if you're into bird watching, but to also use it as a tool to find new locations to go out to. See, and going back to golden cheeked warbler here, so I know that this bird is going to be breeding in this area. So if I want to, I can even filter. Let me type it in here. I can even filter just to see the images of this bird and see kind of more or less how this bird is working the area. See, looks like look, it's just up in the treetops here. So if I'm gonna look for this bird, I've got to find a place elevation to be eye level with this bird. So um, just kind of keep that in mind with your species. Make sure you do some research on it as well, not just like, look for the just not necessarily only look for the location, but also how your bird likes to perch. Does it like to stay low to the ground? Does it like to stay in the middle canopy? Does it like to stay up in the treetops? So just to keep that in mind. And another thing that I'll use with eBird is the bar charts. The bar charts help me to know more or less when these birds are going to arrive and if they breed in the area. So I'm going to click the bar charts here and go through this filter process. I'll talk about it just briefly, but you can look up a video on YouTube, and I'm sure eBird even has a resource page that lets you see how to use the bar charts. But if you go to United States, search for your state. I'm doing Texas, of course, and I'm going to search for the counties. I'm going to once again look for Kimball County, and I'm going to look for when the golden-cheeked warbler arrives, even though I know the answer. So here's a thing too, this date range. If you're looking for birds, looking for locations, make sure you change this year. It's like from 1900 to 2025. You probably want to look for something more accurate. And you can, if you click on that box, you can kind of filter it further down to if you want to look for spring migration, breeding season, fall, winter. I'm just going to put the entire year, and I will be putting this to closer to 2025. I'm gonna probably do 2020s. Good enough. And I'm going to scroll down for my songbirds, looking for the golden-cheeked warbler. So I got it here. So look at this. It's see it's kind of pretty low here in the early couple weeks of March, but mid-March is where this thing starts hitting. So if I'm gonna go look for golden cheeked warbler, I'm not gonna be looking for it at the end of February. I'm not gonna be looking at it at the beginning of March. I'm gonna start my search probably around March 15th and later on. And you can kind of use this concept for a lot of other songbirds here. Like here's the summer tanager, like the one I had shown earlier. Like this bird's not going to show up. I mean, you can still find like the occasional rarity. Like this bird may just randomly show up mid-March just because it wanted to come to its spot earlier, earlier in the year. I don't know, but you know, you'll if you want to go look for a summer tanager, you'll probably best bet is to just wait till April, mid to late April. And so, yeah, golden cheek warbler is good. Another one that comes early to the hill country is the black and white warbler. I'm trying to find it on here. Uh, where is it at? I'm not can't see it. My dyslexia is kicking in. There it is right here. Black and white warbler. Okay, so here's another one that comes around mid-March. So that's another great bird to look for. And you can see too, if you want to know if a bird's breeding in the area or not, just look through the June, July, August section here. Like for example, here's an orange-crowned warbler. I know not to look for this bird during June, July, August because it's not going to be here. It's going to be up in California and Alaska breeding. So, but the black and white warbler, on the other hand, I will definitely be looking for this bird because I know that this is its territory as well. So just to keep that in mind, bar charts is a great feature. I use it all the time. I love it. And yeah, just kind of using that will help refine your search for uh, for different birds. Another one I'll use is, of course, Google Maps. I'm going to use Kimball County again. Kind of what I do is I will look for certain locations in that area, see where the birders mostly are going to. Just kind of look through the recent checklists on eBird, see what people have been seeing. And I will go onto Google and type in that location and look for some images just to see if I can find some elevation in those areas. So, like I just typed in South Atlanta River State Park. I know that's in Kimball County. I am looking for hiking trails, and sure enough, look at this. I find this little trail here, and I can easily see that there's a nice distant backgrounds in these in this area here. So. This is a trail that I would probably be interested in scouting and making sure that there's golden cheek warblers or summer tanagers in the area. And I'm probably would like to sit up in this top of this hill here and just kind of listen to see what's around. So use Google Maps and Google Images as well. It's just a great tool to kind of reinforce your search for locations. So what to bring? What do you want to bring when you're photographing songbirds? This is just kind of like your standard stuff, but it's always like pretty important, especially in Central Texas. You probably want to wear some long pants so you don't get ticks on you, and make sure you tuck them in your socks as well. Gosh, I hate getting ticks. It is so frustrating too, especially when you have to like, you know, kind of do your search and make sure there's nothing on you. So I always go out when I'm photographing songbirds, especially in May and April, and you know it's just horrible to get a tick on you during those seasons. So I always wear long pants and tuck them in. And I know they make like of course you can buy a bug spray and get your clothes treated with special things to not get ticks and other types of critters, insects on you. So that's always great. Make sure you wear, you know, some good hiking or snake boots in the Texas Hill Country. You know, we have a lot of rattlesnakes, and you probably don't want to step on one of those. That'll probably ruin your outing for songbirds. So I'd recommend just some nice protection for boots. And if you're gonna be walking in a lot of these areas too, you know, it's just good to bring the right footwear. Uh, of course, I just put hat on here. You know, that's going to be a good thing, so you don't bake in this heat. Which, gosh, it's already you know, it's going to be hot soon after this week here in Central Texas. So So it just like seems like it's just gonna be summer, almost every darn month of the year. So you might as well just bring a hat for your protection. Water and food when you go to these far areas. It's always a good idea. Bring a phone charger. Bring in your phone. You can use Merlin, the app. It's great to listen to the calls and the birds singing around your area, so you know what is actually there. And of course, your photography gear, your camera, your lens, and whatever else your monopod, tripod. Yeah, see, I wanted to go over that in this next slide. So I don't actually, let me go back one. I don't, and I want to talk about it with this one here, this Rufous Crown Sparrow. I actually photographed this kind of recently. Um, I kind of like this image. It's on an agave, a century plant. If anybody's interested in that, I I photographed this bird on a windy day. Like the winds were at least 15 or 20, like the gusts were 15 or 20 miles per hour. Um, and I was photographing this bird on a Nikon Z6 III with a 180 to 600, and I'm just hand holding it. I wasn't even using a tripod or monopod, and this stayed pretty sharp. One of the great things about these mirrorless cameras and these mirrorless lenses is that they've got some super great image stabilization. So if you have a mirrorless camera and mirrorless lens, it's just like an added plus. I don't even bring out my monopod anymore just because I'm pretty good at like hand holding even at using slow shutter speeds. So but you can bring your monopod or tripod if you want. I it's just crazy like I'm using those less and less now, but um, it's up to you if you want to take those or not. Talking about gear again. Here's another example. This was all in just one outing here. This ruby crown kinglet on this box elder here. And this is just handheld again. If anybody's ever photographed a ruby crown kinglet, they're so darn fast and flighty. It's just hard to get a quick shot of these guys. I always, I'm that same photographer where I snap a picture of a ruby crown kinglet, thinking I got a sharp image of it, and then I look at the back of my camera, and it's just like a blur, just the bird buzzing off, quickly going away. But sometimes you get lucky, and these mirrorless cameras, mirrorless lenses, do help out with photographing those fast birds, I must say. So now moving on to songbirds during migration. Um, you know, During a time of migration, you can have anything show up in your area. Um, or if you go to these locations where there's hot spots for spring and fall migrants, you can walk away with photos of multiple different species in just one outing. Um, this orchard oriole was photographed in South Texas, uh, right along the Gulf of Mexico and South Padre Island. And these birds, these orioles, warblers, vireos, all those things just use South Padre Island as like their first, literally like their first landing spots after crossing the Gulf of Mexico. So I think it's Gulf of America now. So they crossed the Gulf of America. I saw that on my Apple Maps yesterday. So yeah, so the Gulf of America, these guys will drop in, and you can, if you can find the plants, the typical plants that these birds are looking for, instead of just walking around, these sanctuaries, like looking, just going around and around nonstop, you can just find a nice plant that these birds will kind of land in to feed and to drink nectar or whatever, and you can walk away with a few species off your list, like this orchard oriole. Um, I was just like the only one photographing this bird. Everybody else was just kind of watching and kind of collecting their species, adding up their species, and I was just like enjoying this orchard oriole within 6 to 12 feet of me, just kind of enjoying this bottle brush tree. I guess it was picking off insects in here. So if you just kind of wait in these plants where you can see, where that there will be birds in to feed, you can easily get a lot of species off your list too, just photographing them that way. So and I don't even think I even had an orchard oriole shot until after this shot this outing. So it just goes to show what you can do. Same thing with this gray catbird. This was photographed in like this huge bush of Turk's cap. I can't even grow like three little Turk's caps in my yard, but down in down in South Padre Island, there's like these whole bushes of these Turk's caps, and evidently the birds love going into there, and the hummingbirds love them for the nectar, and I guess the birds like them to find insects as well. So I just or berries. I don't know. There's just this big clump of Turk's cap. There might have been other stuff in there. I don't could have been anything. As I know gray catbirds like berries. So but this bird was just in there. I kind of found a window, and those little red dots are, of course, the Turk's cap, which is a native plant down here in Central and South Texas. So it's just kind of cool to tell this story here because gray catbirds don't breed in this area, and they certainly don't breed in South Padre Island, but they pass through. They use these plants for feeding and to gain more energy for their fuel to continue their migration farther north. So it's just kind of cool to tell that story too. How this gray catbird is in a bush of Turk's caps, pretty much. Gosh, this thing was huge, just full of these Turk's caps, just red blotches. It looks kind of nice. So, and songbirds during the breeding season, their behavior, like I discussed earlier, you'll typically see a lot of songbirds up in the treetops, kind of singing, establishing their territories, and you can capitalize on that. Like this golden cheek warbler I talked about it earlier. You know, sometimes you gotta drive 40 45 minutes for a bird, but if you get a shot, you know, a nice shot you like, it's worth it in the end. It doesn't make that trek so bad if you get a nice shot. So just kind of keeping those techniques in mind. If you do those things, your chances of getting a great shot of a songbird increase. So you don't end up in one of those times like I've had so many of those outings where I go out, I don't get anything, and I'm like, God, so annoyed. Just I have to drive all this way back. I didn't get anything, but you just apply those techniques, and that's what's happened to me. I made all these mistakes early on, so I'm hoping I can help you all out and not make those same mistakes. Or even if you do, I guess it's just good learning experiences too. Just kind of learning what works and what doesn't. Here's a picture of a cactus wren down in South Texas, and you can kind of going off of how they behave in the breeding season. I photographed this one, yeah, down in the deep South Texas, and it was on these gosh, prickly pear cactuses here, and this was back in April of last year, and I was walking this trail and I knew there was cactus wren here because of course, I was using eBird. So I went to the area and I eventually found these cactus wrens. And what I did not know was that they had built a nest in these prickly pear cacti, and I just saw these flowers as I was walking through the trail. I was like, oh my gosh, these things look amazing. I would absolutely love a cactus wren on one of these. And sure enough, I came to the end of the trail and I found that there was two of them, and I found that they had a nest, and I was watching them from the trail. And keep in mind, these prickly pear cacti were just literally just right off the trail. Like you could just take two steps and you'd be right in front of them. And I would watch these birds just go through the nest, bouncing on these cacti, just back and forth, going into the nest, feeding the chick, and going out. Same, just kept going back and forth as people were just walking by them. And so they had definitely gotten used to people, from what I could tell. So I kind of used that knowledge and just sat still, waited in the area, and waited for these cactus wrens to come back. And eventually, this one did. this one I can't tell if it's a male or female, but this one had was just the nest is right is to the left of the image where it's looking. It just was used it used for whatever reason it used this kept using this little cactus to bounce from here to then go to the nest. So I kept seeing that behavior that it was doing, and I trained my lens and my camera on this little flower here, and I was able to capture this image of this cactus wren. And I never even thought I would have been able to photograph a cactus wren until that day. I was so excited for that because I know they're in the deep South Texas, but I'd only ever seen them in New Mexico. So it was just like a sudden like, whoa, I was able to photograph this bird. So it can happen. Here's another one. I kind of wanted to just show this lazuli bunting. This was not in Texas. These birds don't breed in Texas. This was in Colorado on my honeymoon trip with my wife. Um, she is the best wife ever to be able to let me. Well, she went with me on this outing. I didn't go by myself, but we went hiking on this trail, and I knew the lazuli buntings were in the area, and I of course I brought my camera and lens on our honeymoon. Um, and I was able to photograph this lazuli bunting. I think this is a choke cherry. I'm not too sure on the plants in that area, but I believe it is a choke cherry. Um, and again, this was in a spot with elevation, and I'm shooting through a bush here. That's why there's this little out of focus bokeh all around the bird, and it was just singing on this choke cherry. I'm gonna call it that. I don't know if it is, but I'm pretty sure it is. Um, and so yeah, it's just kind of learning how these birds work. I knew buntings kind of like doing this typical behavior from photographing painted buntings down here in central Texas. So you may be able to get lucky, and if you find a different species, you maybe works the same as some you photograph at home. I don't know why this is up there, but there's my summer tanager again. It's I like this image, I guess. I liked it. I wanted to include it again. So there he is. Um, Another story of the bird behavior during the breeding season. This vermilion flycatcher. I photographed this in an area I knew that they were in. Um, and I had seen them going back and forth to their nest, and they would use this agave to perch on before going to feed their chicks as well, and to go back into the nest. They would use this as well for hunting, for catching insects. Um, so I kind of watched them, observed what they were doing, and couldn't believe my eyes because this color is like legit real. This was like hardly any editing done to it because like I could not saturate this like hardly any, because that bird would have just turned like a super ugly color of red where it wouldn't look real, and these other colors too. This was just like on an amazing, beautiful morning. Like this was one of those outings where you're just like you're holding up your lens and you're just like shaking with excitement. Like that was me. I was literally shaking because I could not believe these views I was getting, these looks in my viewfinder. I thought it was just like I had died and gone to heaven to be able to get an opportunity to photograph a vermilion flycatcher this close in this light. So just again, it's just knowing your bird behavior. Like I knew this bird was using this perch, so I kind of worked my way around and was able to get this shot. I think I went over this one too. This fall and migration, like this winter time, like anything can show up in your area. You know, like this bird could have been any non-breeding plumage warbler. It just still would have looked nice with these kind of fall colors here. So just kind of keep that in mind. You know, looking for your areas with elevation. So. Um, Here's another one of a Wilson's warbler. This was in an area where I can get um, higher up in the treetops, which is hard to do in this particular part of Central Texas. But there's just tons of Wilson's warblers and yellow-rumped warblers, Nashville warblers that migrate through here. Um, and I knew through eBird, so I just kind of waited in one spot. Like there on this day, I remember there was dozens, if not hundreds, of flocks of Wilson's warbler and Nashville warbler passing through, yellow warbler. I didn't even just follow, like there could have been the most rare warbler at the time, like with that flock, but I didn't care. I just stayed in the same area, waited till something landed on this perch here, and I got this image. And I kind of like it. It's like looking up at this little leaf here. Um, I've just found that it's better to just wait in your areas that you know that can photograph well, especially if you're in a spot where there's going to be a lot of birds that pass through. You'll get something. It can, like I said, this could have been a yellow warbler, this could have been a Nashville warbler, and I still would have been happy with this image. Okay, so we're done with songbirds. We're gonna move on to the shorebirds now. Kind of gear that I'll use. Gonna go over the clothing and then after the outing, I put some images of B&H, just some stuff that I use on there. I'm not affiliated with them, but I thought I'd share these tools that I use. If you want to take notes of them, um, they're pretty good. I don't know about this $100 skimmer ground pod. That seems like a bit too much. You can probably make your own for way cheaper than that. But I own one of these. I don't even know if I spent 100 on mine. I don't think I did. But you don't have to spend that much money on one of these silly things. You can just get a frying pan and make one your own. But there's one there if you want. So kind of the gear I'll use is, like I said, the ground pod for shorebirds. I'll use my water shoes just because I have gone too many times to the mud flats and gotten my flip-flops stuck in them. So I just I just keep water shoes now because I have left a lot of flip-flops in the mud because they've broken off. Um, You'll want to bring a brush to wipe off the sand that you may get on your lens or your camera. Please do that because sand. From my own experience, I have ruined two Nikon zoom lenses because I'm pretty sure, I don't want to admit it, but I've gotten sand in there and it's jammed the zoom mechanism on two of these lenses. So that's just from me not taking care of my equipment. And once I moved up to mirrorless, I learned from my mistakes and I bought that brush there that you see, and it does a pretty good job at getting rid of all the dust or the sand that gets on your equipment. You don't have to get that one. That's a little bit too much too, like 25 bucks, but I like it. I like that one. Um, you can also wear like these frog togs here. I like these. I throw them on when I'm photographing shorebirds, and then I'll just take it off when I'm done, so I don't have a bunch of like wet sand stuck to my arms and my clothes. I don't have to change. But if you do need to, it is good to always bring an extra change of clothes, um, just in case, because if you want to get back in your car and drive back home, I'm sure it's not that fun to keep sand all in your seats and in your floorboards and just kind of get that off. You can just bring a change of clothes. Keep a trash bag in your back for all your wet and sandy clothes. So just toss it in so it's not just sitting in your trunk. Um, and then those plastic covers for your camera lenses, I like those. I don't have a picture of them, but you can just find them on Amazon or your local camera store. They do a pretty good job too at keeping your gear clean from the water and from sand. So I just kind of going over this stuff. It's typically good, but you don't really need to use a skimmer ground pod or those frying pans to photograph shorebirds, but it's just, it's a nice tool to have just to kind of keep if you may need it. And for my approach with shorebirds, what I like to do with shorebirds is, in my opinion, these shorebirds can be some of the easier birds to photograph just because if you depending on the area, um, they are they can be habituated to people. And it seems like if you are more like eye level with them, you don't always run the risk of just making them flush off and go away. I mean, of course, it does happen, but if you just kind of slow your approach to them, you might be able to get closer looks. So with this image, for example, I was down again in South Padre Island. This was during a high tide. So I just had found this area off the side of the road where these all these piping plovers and Wilson's plovers. I'm trying to think of what else was there. Maybe semi-palmated was there as well. They were just roosting in this little sandy area that off the side of the road because there was a high tide. They couldn't feed, and they were using this foreground here. It's just sand, but it's actually there was like an ATV, I guess, that had gone by, and these birds were kind of hunkering down in the little tire marks that the ATVs had gone in through. And I was able to kind of crawl slowly, like army crawl closer to them. This was early. This was well before the sun was started to get good. It was pretty harsh, but I knew I could just sit there and just kind of slowly creep my way forward. And that's another good reason too why you should bring an extra change of clothes or wear that poncho, is just because you're going to be crawling around in sand, not just staying in one area all the time for shorebirds. Um, so I was able to just slowly get my way closer and closer to this flock. Eventually, the light started to go down, started to look so nice. I looked for this green in the background too, and I was able to capture this image of this piping plover just chilling before sunset. And I think that that little white thing in the background was probably a Wilson's plover back there, but I'll pretend it's a giant seashell. Um, but yeah, you can is if you just slow your approach, you know, sometimes like I'm guilty of this. If you just slow your approach and not get too excited, like me, I remember this day I was like freaking out because I had just this all to myself, this whole big flock of plovers. But if you just kind of keep yourself calm, cool, and collected, and just focus on your mission, you can get away with a shot. I don't know. I don't know how many people out there are like me, but gosh, if something like looks so pretty that I know is gonna look good or photograph good, I just like start shaking like with excitement. I can't even hold my camera steady, but you know, gotta stay calm. Um, in talking about technique here, just like I said earlier, if you know your area, if you know that there's going to be shorebirds walking by you feeding and just kind of looking nice looking pretty, you can stay, you can even stay in that area and just whatever happens to go by you, you know it's going to photograph well, like this tricolored heron. This was again down in South Padre Island, Texas, on the morning, and I've been to this location so many times. I know how it photographs in the morning. I know how it photographs in the evening. So I sat in this spot and waited well before sunrise. In fact, the birds weren't even feeding. They were still kind of roosting way farther out behind me. I knew once the sun came up, these birds would eventually start moving further in and start to feed. So the birds thought of me, I guess, as a piece of debris, maybe, or they just kind of thought I was part of the area, the habitat. And they got comfortable with me and started to feed, walking past me within minimum focusing distance. Like this tricolored heron, this bird is within 6 to 12 feet. And I just this could have been a reddish egret, could have been a snowy egret, could have been an oyster catcher. It does not matter. I would have been happy with this shot. Um, Kind of like the little tiny leaf plant there, that water plant, and the tricolored heron kind of showing off that size comparison there. Um, so yeah, just know your locations. Even if you don't come away with a shot like a picture you like in your first or even second outing in a new area, just keep going because it may end up turning out to be a good spot. Like when I first came to this area, this location, I didn't know that this would be a good spot to lay down in the mornings, but I just through trial and error eventually found out that this was good, and I ended up capitalizing on this spot. So every time I want to photograph shorebirds in the morning, I will go to this location and just sit here and wait till whatever crosses my path. Kind of again that reinforced enforced point of just waiting, kind of sitting by your shoreline, picking your good areas that photograph well, meaning you're checking your backgrounds and you're checking your light. This blackneck stilt here, this was photographed on a lake, not too far away from me, and I knew these stilts would cross my path. I knew they were in the area, so I had just sat and waited. And just eventually they came by, walked past me. Um, but what I don't recommend is like if you know there's gonna be shorebirds like in the area and it may photograph well, but there's alligators in the area. I don't know if it's a good idea to be so close to the shoreline like this. Like I think maybe Linda knows what I'm talking about here. This lake, maybe probably beneath too, um, but just I guess be careful of your surroundings. I will say, and keep an eye open if you are in a place that has alligators. Moving on to waterfowl here. I kind of kept these same images. Just these are things that I still use for waterfowl. But just I kind of kept the pictures, but down in the bullet points, they're a little bit different. Like, for example, the yoga mat. I won't bring a yoga mat for shorebirds, but I will definitely bring one for waterfowl. Um, and a definitely I will use a blind. I don't know if too many people use bird blinds for waterfowl, but for me and my experience, I have learned that it is a game changer to get um, these wild ducks closer to you. Um, if you just use a blind, I have had all kinds of ducks within minimum focusing distance with using a blind, and I don't think I would have been able to get these ducks had I not used a photo blind. Like I'm talking like cinnamon teal and hooded mergansers, blue wing teal, green wing teal. These are wild ducks. These aren't domesticated. So if you are able to get a bird blind or make your own, you can make your own with just like a couple PVC pipes and some camo mesh. That's good. That honestly, it's good enough for a lot of waterfowl to just use something as basic as that. You don't have to buy an already made photo blind. But I definitely do recommend using a bird blind for ducks instead of just going out and laying by the shore. These ducks are so smart. They're like, I don't know, like what they have two brains or something, or if they just know when people are around. But gosh, these ducks are in my opinion the hardest to photograph. Um, Again, I have an extra change of clothes here because you may get muddy, you may get dirty in these areas. You're laying down, maybe it has mud and not so pleasant conditions. Maybe it doesn't smell too nice, like in the places I go to, the mud does not smell nice. But I'd recommend having an extra change of clothes. And what is important that I also have discovered is using a hoodie to cover your eyes and your face to kind of pull it over. This is just things that I've learned too. Like again, I think ducks have a third eye or something. They just know when you're around. But what I have learned doing this myself is just for some reason a hoodie covering your eyes helps break that up. Maybe ducks can see through your blind and they see the eyes and they think you're like a predator. I don't know. But I'll wear a hoodie and cover up my eyes just to kind of help protect me and get those ducks a little bit closer. And I also have a plastic cover again for your camera and lens. It's just annoying to get those things muddy, so it's always good to have those. Um, and yeah, the clothing. If it's gonna be cold, make sure you're wearing your warm clothes. If you're gonna get in the water, I don't have a blind to get in the water. That's the bad thing here about Central Texas. A lot of this land is private, and a lot of the good locations to get waterfowl. You can't really just walk up and get in the water. But if you are in some other part of the U.S. and you can get in, make sure you have the proper clothing if the water's cold and you're in frigid waters. And yeah, you're after your outing too, again, just make sure you bring a trash bag if you're going to throw out your, not throw out, but just kind of keep it, don't want to get your car dirty. Keep a trash bag just to throw it all in there and to clean it up at a later time. Going through some of these images here, just talking about my technique, these hooded mergansers. This was in the same location, not the same year. This the one on the right was from was from 2024, and the one on the left was on 2023. It's the same location, just different years. But oh my gosh, these are probably the hardest ducks I've ever photographed. They are just so smart. They know where you are always. They must have like the heat signatures in their eyes or something. They just know you're there. I don't know. I don't know. But but these ducks are so tough. So what I do in this location, I know that there's a little kind of like a hill to the left of me, and it kind of curves down and goes back up to make like a kind of another hill. We'll just call it like just a mound of dirt. So I'll go wait in that little curve, waiting for these hooded mergansers to swim past me. They don't know I'm there because they can't see with that mound of dirt. So as they float past me, swimming towards me, that's my window of opportunity to photograph these ducks. Um, I don't, like I said, I don't know. These birds are just, they just are so smart. They know where you are. That's what I found, that's what I found successful for me to photograph these hooded mergansers. It's just waiting for them to come to me. I'm just, I'm just kind of not surprising them, but they don't know that I'm there because they're crossing through an area they can't see. So they're not like swimming directly to me. I could never do that with these hooded mergansers in this location. I wanted to show this wood duck picture again with my technique here. This is just like showing off the slow shutter and a little bit of post processing techniques. I wish I had the before, but I don't. You can kind of cool off your temperatures here in Lightroom and Photoshop and kind of get this cooling effect and brighten it up. So at least you kind of know that like you may like this could have been any duck actually, but I worked on it just enough so you could tell it is a wood duck, just by kind of the outline here. And I kind of like how it's kind of swimming out of that mist. And this is just that technique again. I'm going out and leaving my house at 5 a.m. Well, yeah, 5 a.m. driving 40 whatever minutes to this location and just waiting for these ducks to swim past me. Um, it's sometimes you got to do that for waterfowl, and you may make that may not come away with anything. I've done it so many times where I've gone to these locations and not photographed anything, and then I have to go change my clothes. I have to put it all in a bag. I have to go wash it outside because I can't bring it in the wash inside. Um, but just keep hammering those spots, and eventually you'll end up getting a shot like this. This took me a couple outings. I knew these wood ducks were there. I hadn't gotten a shot of them yet, but I've always wanted to get a kind of a wood duck shot like this. And so I just kept working the location on my weekends. Eventually I got it. So just keeping up these techniques and practices, and eventually you will get something. You just got to keep doing it. Here's another wood duck I wanted to show. This is kind of to go over looking for your backgrounds, like watching your backgrounds here. This was photographed, gosh, this was in last year. It was either late November or early December. We still had some fall colors from some trees in this area. So I'm kind of looking for this little window magic, I like to call it. Um, just waiting for this bird to swim past. Like I could have photographed it well before this shot, but I was afraid of moving. I was afraid somehow this bird would maybe notice me and swim the other direction. So I was not shooting at all until this duck came into this little window here with this like yellow, green, orange color here. Um, so as long as you can time your shots and make sure you look for your backgrounds, look for those sweet spots, you can walk away with a nice shot. Like I said, this duck, if I just shot it a little bit earlier to the right, I do not have this color. I have a black sticky mess. It looks horrible. So that's what I did. I know this location. I knew that there's this window here in the fall. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to photograph waterfowl, is to kind of look for those little magic windows and just wait for that duck to swim through it. A little bit over the technique too, kind of capturing that movement, that just kind of timing. And if you notice here, I changed my logo down here in the bottom left. It's not as big, but anyways, yeah, I just kind of watching for how these birds are behaving. And so like this red-breasted merganser, this was down in South Texas, and this female was with a group of other female red-breasted mergansers, and they were fishing this area, and I would watch them dive, 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 and come back up and dive, 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 going through really quickly. It was actually pretty crazy, tough to track them, but I kind of got this one right as soon as it popped up, and it had gotten through on top of this little wave, and I guess it had kind of dried off here, and that's what I was photographing with that water there, kind of brushing it off. So if you can kind of study the birds while you're tracking them, you can kind of catch them in a pattern. Like I knew that these ducks would come up, and I didn't expect it to brush off, but I knew it was gonna pop up. And after fishing within that area, so just kind of watching your birds and knowing, kind of studying them is a great thing. And going over to just the technique, watching your light as well in your area. Like I know that this lake here, this was photographed in the afternoon. I could not get this light in the morning, so this little pink orange light there. This was literally how it looked too. Like I did not saturate this much at all either, of this least grebe. So I knew that this location kind of photographs pretty well in the afternoons. So I came through here, and like I've been saying with the songbirds, like this could have been any duck, and it could have been any grebe, and I would have liked how this turned out. So just again, knowing your locations, kind of going to them multiple times, finding out what backgrounds look nice, how the light operates in your area, how it works, how it looks, and you can eventually get a nice image. These leaf grebes are so cool. They're one of my favorite grebes. Probably one of my favorite waterfowl too. Also, because you have to come down here in South Central Texas to get these guys. I don't. They might be in Arizona too, like very southern Arizona. I don't know. Um, but they're all over here in Central and South Texas, so they're absolutely one of my favorite. And this is another example of a bird you can't get anywhere else. Really, if you want good numbers, you should come to Texas and see these birds. And another grebe here, technique, kind of just again watching your light. This was early in the morning. Um, this was during a misty morning too, and just as kind of the mist started to kind of fade out and the sun started to peek through, this pied-billed grebe came through. um, and sometimes it's good to just still wait in your area even if you think you're not going to get anything. Like I thought, oh my gosh, this on this day I had not photographed anything yet, and there was ducks all swimming way beyond me and to the left, to the right, just and I had my blind, they just weren't swimming to me. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is just another wasted outing. This water is not moving. It is so still. It is literally pink and blue. There is no ducks around me. I was like so upset. But I I stayed and waited in this area. Eventually, this pied-billed grebe started to swim through the mist, and it came closer. It started to swim past me. So I was like, "Oh my gosh, this looks amazing!" And thankfully I waited and got this nice image of a pied-billed grebe. Um, they're kind of common in this area. I guess they are in most parts of the U.S., but like I do not even care if this is a common bird or not. I just think this image is pretty. So
So, are you ready for some questions?
yes.
Okay. So, Jamie's question is, do you shoot with a tripod and gimbal, or are you a handheld shooter?
I have a tripod, I have a monopod, I have a gimbal, and I do use all of them, but now that I switched to the like mirrorless cameras and lenses, I don't use a monopod as much as I used to. Um, in my opinion, monopods are the best for songbirds. If you want to still use a monopod with a gimbal, I prefer those over tripods because they offer more flexibility. And you know
Yeah.
those darn warblers and vireos, they're always moving back and like all hopping around. So those monopods and gimbal help out with a little bit more flexibility with that.
Um, I think it was Alden's question. So, if you can recall from before we started, Alden is not a bird photographer. I think you may have recruited him because he's got a lot of questions for you. But
Oh.
okay, so somebody's question is, what's your go-to lens, and are you using a teleconverter?
Yeah, my lens I'm using right now is a 180 to 600. It's a Nikon and it's a 6.3 lens. So if you can get a 500 f4, carry those things around, I would recommend that. I have this 180 to 600 just simply because it's like just it's not too expensive. I don't have to break the budget on that lens. And I don't know, I have the Z6 III. I kind of like the idea of using like that. I call it a budget baller setup. Like I don't have a Z9. I don't have like this $14,000 lens. I have my setup is like 4,000, 5,000 bucks, and I like that.
And it doesn't matter. Based on your photos, it does not matter what camera system you use. Your photos were absolutely stunning. And it's a little selfish for me to say it, but I love that you show so much of the environment. That's my thing right now. That's my jam. Everybody wants the big bird right in your face and you see all the details. But I think for me, it's the environment. Where is that bird sitting? And I just think that is so much more of a story than these up close and personal, um, in their beak kind of shots. So I just love it, and it doesn't matter what camera system you're using. It's your artistry, and that truly comes through your work.
Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah,
Uh,
I agree. And like that's a thing with Instagram too. Like I don't get me wrong, I do like those shots where the birds are in your face, but like
sure.
I don't and that does well on Instagram, but to be honest, I don't care what does well on Instagram. I've learned to not care anymore because of all the things how it is. I want to photograph what I like. So, and I
Right.
post on there.
We are on the same page. Okay, so Alden, who's not the bird photographer, he says you're shooting with a mirrorless Nikon. What focus mode are you typically using?
Um, I use single point and I just use the what is the other one called? Shoot, I guess it's 3D tracking. Yeah, I use 3D tracking and then I also have like a single point I use a lot when I'm shooting through like foreground because these mirrorless cameras they're good, but if I have the animal eye tracking, but it'll pick up the background, it'll pick up the foreground. It will not always pick up the bird. So sometimes if I'm shooting through foreground, especially, I'll switch to one of my pre-programmed buttons on my camera to switch to single point, and I can better focus in on those like those birds that are shooting through foreground, like that summer tanager picture.
Okay. And this is, I think the question popped up when you were showing your shorebirds. Jamie wants to know, are you crawling on the ground?
Um, well, yes and no. To get to the location, like that piping plover, I was crawling in. Um, and for the tricolored heron, I was not that one. I was just sitting there waiting for the birds to come to me. I think you should still crawl around if you're still new to your area, and you want to maybe the birds are feeding farther away from you, I think it's better to crawl to that area and get closer that way instead of just getting up big because they'll see that and they may flush your area. So yeah, if you're in a new area and you know that the birds have a chance of flying off, I would recommend crawling or just kind of yeah, army crawling closer to them. It doesn't it seems like that is a little bit better at getting them to still stay in the area than to just standing up on your legs and walking.
Okay, so this is a combination of questions, but I think I can make it all work. Uh, so Jamie's asking, do you scope out landing spots and you're just hoping for those birds to land? Or are you walking around looking and shooting, when they're up and you're just waiting for them to come down? What's your process?
Yeah, that is such a good question. In and it depends on the area that I'm in that I'm photographing. I have this one location that that is along a river that I am eye level with the birds, and I guess because like it is next to a water source and it is next to trees that seem to have a lot of bugs, they pass through this group of trees constantly bouncing through as they feed, and I guess I don't know, sometimes during migration I get them do this flocks. So in that location I will stay in that area and just wait and just kind of hone in on little sweet spots again like I discussed with the waterfowl. I will just keep those in mind, and just as these birds are bouncing through the area I will be kind of keeping an open eye looking for them as they kind of hit these windows, and that's when if I see a bird go in that window, that's when I go and shoot it, photograph it.
You're in Texas. We say
Yeah,
shoot.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I can't break my habit of saying shoot either. Okay, so for my friend Alden, who is going to be a bird photographer at the end of this session, okay, he says, nice composition with the agave, and that is one of my favorite photos of yours. Um, uh, for selfish reasons, the cactus wren is my favorite in the presentation, but the agave picture comes a close second. Okay, he's curious about the process of getting a shot like this. Do you have the composition in mind and you wait for that bird to land there? Or do you have multiple compositions in an area and just wait for something to happen?
yeah. Well, thank you, Linda, and thank you, Alden. I appreciate that. Yeah, that was because I knew I'd watched that cactus wren. I knew that it was going to hit that little perch before going to its nest. I was studying that and kind of moving around to kind of find that little angle to not to kind of make that composition the way I liked it. Like I didn't want to have in the background like a big blotch of a cactus behind it, because then I feel like that wouldn't have looked as nice. Like there was cactuses around the bird, but if you notice there wasn't one directly behind it, there wasn't one coming up over its head. So those are things that I'm looking for if I'm studying bird behavior. I'm not only kind of watching the birds as they go through, I'm also watching how my backgrounds and how the scene looks. So yeah, I will, if I have to move to kind of get a distracting part of the image, if I have to get rid of it, yeah, I'll move to the left or to the right. So yeah, that's another great question, is just also looking at your scenery and seeing if you know the bird's gonna land on this spot, make sure your background doesn't have like a stick going through that area, because you know the bird's gonna land there. You don't want a stick going through your bird.
Yeah. So that leads me to ask you, do you remove sticks that are in the way, or are you more of a purist?
Yeah, I do. I remove, I clone, I even use the generative AI for things like not to add, something to the image, but I've learned that the AI actually does a pretty good job at stick removal too. That's what I use it for. I will not use AI to like add a little bug on a beaker flying through. Like you can use that AI tool to kind of highlight around. It's kind of like cloning, I guess, and it'll fill it in pretty nicely at times.
Okay. All right. That was the end of the questions. For now, as soon as I close out this session, there will be some that pop up. All right, Daniel, let me just say thank you for sharing all your little tips and I mean the ideas, and thank you for being a what's the word? An ambassador for Texas birding. So I grew up here, and I just think that we have so many little treasures and little cubby holes of cool stuff. And I think that you really, really showed off the Central Texas area for birding. And I hope that people in this room, there are people in here from Michigan. Jan and Donna, I'm looking at you. And I've got my New Jersey friend in here who loves doing little songbirds, and I've been trying to get her down here. So you're just helping me with that argument to persuade them to come and check us out. All right. I'm going to close out this session. Do you have anything you want to say before I let you go?
No, yeah, but you're just absolutely right, Linda. I mean, everybody comes here for birding for sure. There's so many people that come for birding, but not really for photography. So and I see it like I said earlier, people go all over around the U.S., but they don't come here for birds. And I'm just kind of hoping that I can spread that information
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, I mean everybody I mean our Gulf Coast area, that's the big path, and we're certainly going to quote unquote pun intended flock to that area. I certainly do. But there are pockets here that there's no water for like 3, 4 hours in these little flat dry brush country areas. So there are birds that hang out there too. So, all right, Daniel, thank you for coming and sharing and making people think about, our area. All right, next week, Danielle Alston will be here with her presentation, Splendor in Simplicity. And until next time, go out and create something beautiful. And I hope that we see you again soon.